You ever notice how anime sequels either age gracefully or crash harder than a Windows update? For every masterpiece that actually grows with its audience, there's a dozen that completely forget what made the original special. But then there's Bleach, the Thousand-Year Blood War, a sequel that somehow managed to crawl out of its own grave, wipe off the near decade of dust, and say, hey, remember me? This wasn't supposed to happen. Bleach was dead, buried, memed into irrelevance. Yet, here we are, 20 years after its original release, and somehow, Kubo's world of Soul Reapers and Hollows feels alive again, and more mature than ever. So today, we're taking a deep dive into how this revival turned one of Shonen Jump's most inconsistent series into a full-blown masterclass in redemption. Bleach is one of those rare cases where a sequel manages to come back swinging, not just reviving a series that had long since cooled off, but maturing right alongside the audience that grew up with it. Despite the original Bleach having more than a few cracks in its armor, the Thousand-Year Blood War proves that sometimes a story really can grow up and glow up at the same time. Before diving into all of that though, I just want to take a second to thank everyone for the insane amount of support on my last video, Dragon Ball GT, a lesson in why Toei should have kept their hands off our balls. That video absolutely blew up in a way I've personally never seen in the years that I've been doing YouTube. So seriously, thank you. But now that I'm done buttering everyone up, let's talk about Bleach. And no, I don't mean the stuff you use to clean your bathroom. Bleach is a manga and anime that carved out its own legacy, becoming a pillar of the manga and anime worlds. At one point, it was even the second best-selling manga in the world, moving over 3.5 million copies, and as of 2022, selling over 130 million copies and holding its own next to titans like One Piece and Naruto. But even with that level of success, Bleach's history as an anime is complicated. We're talking about a series with entire arcs spanning 40+ episodes that weren't even part of the original story. For years, fans have debated what's worth watching and what you can skip without losing your sanity. Despite all that, Bleach just refuses to die. Like its orange-haired protagonist, it keeps coming back. Even after an 8-year hiatus, it came back hard. That's what I'm here to talk about today. Why I think the Thousand-Year Blood War arc is a superior sequel to the original series, and what makes it, for the most part, a better story. Bleach has been around for over 2 decades, and it's built an empire. Video games, movies, merch, even a Netflix live-action adaptation. It's influenced countless artists and creators, and maybe even caused a plagiarism scandal. I also can't skip mentioning its soundtrack, which is easily one of the best in anime. Though, I'll never understand why the first season outro used was Life is Like a Boat. Bit of a mood killer after a sword fight, but it still kind of slaps. Anyways, with the manga having an impressive run of over 14 years, it's no surprise that Bleach got a massive anime to match. But the original show, it's got problems, big ones. It's inconsistent, padded, and often messy. The kind of thing that makes you wish someone would just clean it up and give it a proper send-off. That's where the Thousand-Year Blood War comes in. But before we talk about how it fixes the sins of the original, we need to rewind a bit, back to the beginning, to understand how Bleach started, and how it became what it is today. Bleach is the brainchild of mangaka Noriyaki Kubo, better known by his pen name, Kubo. He wasn't born into fame, he didn't have connections. What he did have was a fascination with death, music, and the way people carried themselves when they were completely unafraid to be cool. Kubo's early life wasn't glamorous. He grew up in a Hiroshima prefecture, surrounded by the ordinary. But like a lot of artists, he saw meaning in the mundane. The curve of a sword, the cut of a uniform, the emotion behind a stare. Everything around him eventually found its way into his art. From a young age, Kubo wanted to be a manga artist. He even entered a manga magazine contest early on. He didn't win, but one of the editors saw something in him and started collaborating with him on small projects. Fast forward a few years, and at just 22 years old, Kubo got his first big break. After being turned down by nearly every major publisher, he finally landed a spot with the juggernaut of manga magazines, Weekly Shonen Jump. His debut series, Zombie Powder, ran for 4 volumes over the course of a year. It didn't exactly set the world on fire, but it was a solid start. Kubo wasn't done yet. His next project would be the one that put his name in the history books: Bleach. Unlike Dragon Ball, which was loosely inspired by the Chinese epic Journey to the West, Kubo's Bleach was a completely original creation. That's not to say he wasn't influenced by other artists or series, everyone is, but Bleach was distinctly his. Originally though, Bleach wasn't even called Bleach. Kubo's first concept was a manga called Snipe, where all the characters fought using unique guns. Over time, the idea evolved. The guns became swords, and Snipe turned into the world of Soul Reapers, or Shinigami. Let's be honest, swords are just way cooler than guns when you're drawing high-speed battles and supernatural duels. Once the characters traded bullets for blades, the title Snipe didn't make sense anymore. Kubo noticed that all his Soul Reaper characters wore black kimonos, and naming the manga black felt too on the nose. So, to contrast the black uniforms, he went with Bleach, a word that evokes white, the color opposite to black. It's simple, but clever. Bleach began serialization in Weekly Shonen Jump in 2001. It didn't look like anything else in Jump. Where One Piece was bright and playful, Naruto was mystical and emotional, Bleach was sleek, minimal, and dripping with swagger. It wasn't about saving the world, it was about how cool you looked while doing it. With being one of the big 3, Naruto and One Piece being the other 2, it was like the cool big brother to the other series, despite being the youngest of the 3 mangas that dominated the scene in the early 2000s. Bleach ran all the way until 2016 with 686 chapters in total. A 15-year run in Jump is no small feat, and Kubo kept it going non-stop until he decided to end the story on his own terms. In 2004, the anime adaptation began production, airing for a full 10 years before ending in 2014, 2 years before the manga itself wrapped up. This meant anime-only fans never actually got to see how the story ended, and for a long time, it looked like they never would. The reason? It's a problem that happens a lot with manga adaptations. The anime catches up to the manga too quickly. Animation studios can burn through storylines a lot faster than a mangaka can draw them. So, when the source material runs out, the studios have to improvise. That's where the infamous filler arcs come in. Entire chunks of episodes created just to kill time until the manga gets ahead again. You can always tell when a filler arc starts, the stakes disappear, the new characters don't matter, and the plot armor gets thicker than a tank. You could chop Ichigo in half, and by the next episode he'd be fine because, well, the real story hasn't started again yet. And Bleach was notorious for this. Even though the anime didn't start until 3 years after the manga, it still caught up too fast. Eventually, the producers decided to call it quits for the time being, to stop before the series dug itself into an even deeper hole. Then, after 7 long years, something incredible happened. Alongside the 20th anniversary of the manga, Bleach was officially announced to return, this time with its final arc, Bleach, the Thousand-Year Blood War. As of writing this, the Thousand-Year Blood War, or TYBW for short, still isn't completely finished in anime form. The final season is expected to drop in 2026, so technically, this review is a bit premature. But these are my thoughts on what's been released so far, and honestly, it was pure coincidence that I even found out it was coming back. About a year ago, I randomly decided to rewatch the original Bleach from start to finish, all 366 episodes of it. I then found out at the same time through my Hulu subscription, no affiliation or sponsorship, that Bleach the Thousand-Year Blood War was out, and I had to check it out. However, that rewatch reminded me why I loved the series in the first place, and why I also had so many issues with it. Because to understand where the Thousand-Year Blood War goes, you have to understand where Bleach came from. So let's rewind and talk about the characters and the arcs that made this story what it is. Now, full disclaimer, I will be going through a lot of the history of Bleach and a lot of the storylines and everything that leads up to the Thousand-Year Blood War. With that being said, if you want to skip straight to the Thousand-Year Blood War, I suggest you go to this point in the video. However, to streamline the chaos, let's speedrun the core cast. Ichigo Kurosaki, 15, brash, and rocking orange hair the show won't shut up about for seasons. He's bullied for it, refuses to diet, king behavior. He's absurdly strong, he doesn't even know how much, stuffed with secrets and untapped potential. He lives with his dad, Isshin Kurosaki, and his 2 younger sisters, Uzu and Karin. Their mom died when he was around 9 and the girls were still babies. He also sees ghosts, we'll be talking about him a lot, so parking it there for now. Rukia Kuchiki, a Shinigami, or Soul Reaper in the English dub. Exact age? Unknown. She's a spirit, so assume much older than she looks. She hails from the Soul Society, call it heaven for our purposes, and comes to Karakura Town, Ichigo's hometown, on what's basically a supernatural work trip. Black kimono, katana at the hip, except it's a Zanpakuto, literally a soul cutter sword. Already an S tier weapon name. If I looted that in D&D, the stats would be broken. Job description: guide lost souls to the Soul Society and exorcise tormented souls that have mutated into hollows. We'll be seeing a lot of her too. Then there are the classmates who get dragged into this. Uryu Ishida, quiet, reserved, and clearly the academic over Ichigo. Not saying Ichigo is Goku level dense, but Uryu is definitely smarter. He's got secrets. We'll get there. Orihime Inoue. How do I put this? Her personality is huge, and somehow grows as the series goes on. She's Ichigo's eventual love interest, though the show slow rolls it. Honestly, good writing. Ditzy at first, develops a ton, and yes, her personality also levels up. Yasutora Chad Sato, half Mexican, half Japanese. Man of a few words, which made it odd that the mid-series voice actor change was super obvious. Towering, strong as hell, an I-beam falls on him and he walks it off like it's just something that happens. And resilient AF, one of Ichigo's pre-series best friends. Isuke Urahara, Mr. Hat and Clogs, candy shop owner. He knows everything, reveals nothing, and each time he does show power, it's amazingly terrifying. He also had a voice actor swap mid-series, and it was jarring. Sounds like he caught a cold. But by the 1,000-Year Blood War, you barely notice. Rest in peace, Michael Lindsay. Hollows. Human spirits that didn't move on and turned into monsters. Think supernatural style vengeful ghosts with kaiju variety and weird powers. Some were just lost people, others were bad people who like hurting things. Either way, they're the Soul Reaper's main enemy. Their realm is Hueco Mundo, purgatory-ish. And yes, Hollow World is what it translates to. Which sounds like the worst theme park ever. Welcome to Hollow World. Great, our foundation is set for Season 1's key players. We'll intro more as they matter, but let's get the ball rolling. Bleach opens with Rukia stalking a hollow through Karakura Town, which leads straight to Ichigo's house. Shinigami are invisible to humans, so she usually moves through the living world freely, until she meets Ichigo, who not only sees her, but he can touch her as well. The hollow attacks Ichigo's home and his sisters. Rukia jumps in, gets badly injured, and asks Ichigo to take some of her power to fight in her place. He agrees instantly. She tells him to stab himself in the stomach so she can pour her Soul Reaper power into him. He does, and boom, Soul Reaper kimono. Rukia notes he's got one of the biggest Zanpakuto she's ever seen. Turns out the ladies aren't the only ones with big personalities in this series. Ichigo deletes the hollow with ease, and just like that, the story begins. From here, we're slowly introduced to the rest of the gang, one by one. As Bleach starts to pull the whole building the squad thing, Rukia, now weakened from giving Ichigo her powers, ends up becoming his reluctant teacher throughout most of the first season. She trains him in the ways of the Soul Reaper, how to sense spiritual pressure, how to swing that oversized sword without killing himself, and tries to make him at least passably competent before the Soul Society finds out what she's done. Rukia also gets herself a Gigai, which is basically a faux human body that lets her exist in the world of the living. With it, she can go to school, walk around, and interact with humans. She even enrolls in Ichigo's high school, and for maximum sitcom energy, secretly lives in his closet. Imagine opening your wardrobe and finding an ancient Grim Reaper. When Ichigo becomes a Soul Reaper, his body and soul literally split. His human body just slumps over, basically an empty shell. Soul Society, realizing that leaving corpses all over the human world is kind of a PR issue, developed something called soul candy. These are tiny pellets that house artificial souls. Pop one of them in your mouth, and voila. Your body walks, talks, and pretends to be you while your real soul's out doing ghost murder. It's clever, but it's also confusing. Why would a normal Soul Reaper need this in the afterlife? Anyway. Apparently, the Soul Candy project started as something way darker, creating modified souls. Aizo Konpako, artificial beings placed into dead bodies and given enhanced abilities to fight hollows. It was shut down for being ethically questionable, and almost all the mod souls were destroyed, except one. Kon is a leftover modified soul with boosted leg strength and zero chill. He usually inhabits Ichigo's body to keep up appearances while Ichigo's off soul reaping, but his true form is a tiny stuffed lion plush that Ichigo literally found in the trash. And yes, he's fully conscious. Imagine being a war weapon turned into a Build-A-Bear with trauma. The rest of the season is largely exposition. Lots of character backstories and motivation dumps, but one standout is Uryu Ishida. Turns out he's not just the quiet, smart kid. He's part of a bloodline called the Quincy's. The Quincy's are basically the rival faction to the Soul Reapers. They hunt hollows too, but instead of purifying them so their souls can move on, Quincy's obliterate them, erasing their existence entirely. This messes with the cosmic balance between the human world and the Soul Society and the afterlife. So naturally, the two sides are mortal enemies. About 2 centuries ago, the Soul Reapers decided to go 100% based Chad mode and wiped out almost every Quincy they could find. Uryu is thought to be the last survivor. Spoiler, he's not. Despite the centuries-old beef, Ichigo and Uryu eventually form a strong partnership, and over time, a genuine friendship. Brothers in arms who start on opposite sides but end up watching each other's backs through some seriously brutal battles. By the end of Season 1, things finally escalate. 2 Soul Reapers arrive from the Serete, a massive fortified city within the Soul Society, to arrest Rukia for her crimes. Apparently, handing her powers to a human was a major violation of Soul Society law. The duo, Renji Abarai, lieutenant of Squad 6, Rukia's childhood friend and eventual love interest, starts off looking like a maniac who will kill anything that moves, but later reveals he's a loyal, big-hearted dude who would die for his friends. Byakuya Kuchiki, captain of Squad 6 and Rukia's adoptive brother. Calm, stoic, and terrifyingly powerful. The kind of guy who could deliver an insult without moving his face. Ichigo, of course, tries to fight them. Spoiler, it goes horribly. Renji, between sword swings, explains that every Soul Reaper's Zanpakuto has a stronger released form called a Shikai, a manifestation of the sword spirit, kind of like a Patronus if it could slice buildings in half. Ichigo doesn't even know his sword's name yet, but he wants to learn. Rukia gets dragged back to the Serete for trial and potential execution, while Byakuya deals Ichigo a finishing blow meant to sever his Soul Reaper powers entirely. At this point, the world of Bleach blows wide open. The Soul Society, the Gote 13, captains, lieutenants, all of it. Everything you've seen so far, just the tutorial. Now, let's meet some of the key players moving forward. Yororichi Shihihon first appears as a talking black cat with a man's voice. Surprise, she's actually a woman, and the former captain of Squad 2, the Stealth and Assassination Division. While most of the Soul Society runs on samurai rules, her unit's pure ninja energy. Spying, killing, delivering secret messages. Basically, if you need someone quietly deleted, she's your girl. Ginryosai Shigekuni Yamamoto, the big boss, the captain of Squad 1, and commander of all 13 court guard squads. He's old, he's terrifying, and his beard probably has more battle experience than most anime protagonists. The dude radiates authority, yet for most of the series, he just stands there, doesn't need to flex. Everyone already knows he's basically god tier. His power is both feared and respected across the board. Lieutenant Chojiro Sasakibe, who exists. He's there, in uniform, breathing. That's about all I can say. He's in the background like a living Easter egg. Sui Feng, captain of Squad 2, and I'm sorry, one of my least favorite characters in the series. She's arrogant, consistently talks over people, and seems convinced that she's better than half the captains combined. Imagine if Pan from GT grew up, but emotionally didn't. Lieutenant Marechio Omaida, a man who looks like he stumbled into the stealth force by accident. He's rotund, dripping in gold jewelry, and somehow louder than his captain. Occasionally redeems himself, but mostly just eats screen time and snacks. Gin Ichimaru. The moment you see Gin, you know something's wrong. That smug smile, those half-closed eyes. He's just got I'm plotting something energy from frame 1. He's the captain of Squad 3 and just oozes malice. I don't even need to explain it, the vibes say it all. Lieutenant Izuru Kira, a quiet, polite guy who looks perpetually tired and emotionally destroyed, fits perfectly under Gin's leadership. Retsu Unohana, captain of Squad 4, the Soul Society's medical division, calm, serene, and terrifyingly composed. She's one of those characters who feels like she's seen way too much. Doesn't get much screen time early on, but trust me, she'll matter later. Lieutenant Isane Kotetsu, a kind, slightly awkward presence who almost hangs around and reacts to chaos like a concerned nurse. Sosuke Aizen, the nicest man alive, the kindest, softest, most couldn't hurt a fly captain you'll ever meet. He leads Squad 5 and just radiates gentle mentor energy. Nothing suspicious here. Totally trustworthy guy. Yeah, we'll talk about him more later. Lieutenant Momo Hinamori. Sweet girl, deeply loyal to Aizen, and close friends with Squad 10's captain, Toshiro. Bless her heart, she's not ready for what's coming. Sajin Homomaru, captain of Squad 7 and a literal wolfman. Big, noble, and covered head to toe early on because he's afraid of how people will react to his unique appearance. He's honorable, loyal, and best friends with one of the next guys on our list, Captain Tozen. Lieutenant Hetsu Zaimon Iba, a man defined by his sunglasses, and his apparent love for drinking more than fighting. Vibes immaculate. Shunsui Kiraku, the cool uncle of the Soul Society, captain of Squad 8 and the most laid-back man alive. Well, spirit alive. The guy's entire personality is, what if we didn't fight and just had sake instead? Honestly, king behavior. If there's one captain I'd want to be, it's him. Lieutenant Nanao Issei, his long-suffering assistant who has perfected the art of politely telling her boss to get back to work. Shunsui is also best friends with Squad 13's captain, Joshiro Ukataki. Kaname Tosen, captain of Squad 9, blind, composed, and deeply moral. The kind of guy who speaks in quotes that sound like they should be engraved somewhere. Commands respect just by existing. Lieutenant Shue Hisagi, the guy with the 69 tattoo on his face. And yeah, you're not alone. Everyone had the same thought when they saw it. Doesn't get a lot of screen time, but when he does, he matters. Toshiro Itsugaya, captain of Squad 10, and basically a kid genius. He looks 12, but don't let that fool you. He's sharp, cold. Literally, his powers are ice-based, and insanely talented for his age. Still not at full control of his abilities yet, but even at half-power, Toshiro is terrifying. Lieutenant Rangiku Matsumoto, who, like Orihime, has a massive personality. Except Rangiko's personality might actually be bigger. Kinpachi Zaraki, the definition of a bloodthirsty maniac, captain of Squad 11 and powered entirely by violence and joy. He doesn't have a Shikai and doesn't want one, and doesn't care. His raw strength is enough to split buildings. He fights purely for fun. Lieutenant Yoichiro Kusajishi, a pink-haired child who rides on his back like he's her personal tauntaun.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
She tries to help him find fights, but usually gets him lost instead. Squad 11 also features Ikaku Madorama, 3rd seat, and Yumichika Asagawa, 5th seat, two brothers-in-arms who live to brawl. Ikaku's another battle junkie. Yumichika is a perfectionist with fabulous energy. Together, they're chaos incarnate. Mayuri Kurosuchi, captain of Squad 12 and the head of the Research and Development Bureau. This guy's a mad scientist in the most literal sense. Painted face, body modifications galore, and general demeanor of a man who's not entirely sure what morality is. One of my absolute favorites. Every fight he's in is both brilliant and horrifying. Lieutenant Nemo Kurosuchi, an artificial being Mayuri created himself. He tweaks her body like she's a lab project and constantly berates her. Early on, it's rough to watch, but she becomes more complex later. Joshiro Ukataki, captain of Squad 13, Rukia's squad. Gentle, calm, and terminally ill. The man spends half the series bedridden and still manages to be more respectable than half the healthy captains. Not sure how someone that sick landed a captain's job, but hey, he's doing his best. At the time of his introduction, he doesn't even have a lieutenant. His previous one died in a battle with a hollow. The guy's just out here struggling through HR and chronic illness at the same time. Respect. That pretty much covers the key Soul Society players for now. We'll meet plenty more, but these are the ones who matter going forward. After getting absolutely destroyed by Byakuya, Ichigo is left powerless, and Rukia is dragged off for execution. So, naturally, he decides, you know what? Let's invade heaven. Classic shonen logic. By now, Chad and Orihime have awakened powers of their own. Chad's arm turns into an Escalates cosplay weapon, and Orihime manifests tiny, fairy-like spirits that heal and shield people. Oryu is refining his Quincy abilities, and Ichigo, he heads straight to Urahara's underground training lab to get his Soul Reaper powers back. He succeeds, and learns two critical things. One, his Zanpakuto has a name, Zangetsu, and his sword can talk to him, because of course it can. With everyone trained and juiced up, Urahara opens a portal to the Soul Society. Godorichi takes point as their guide through the gate into the Serete, the fortress city where Rukia is being held. And from here, it gets crazy. The gang quickly learns that they can't just stroll into the Serete. The whole place is surrounded by a barrier made of spiritual energy. So they team up with the Shiba family, who specializes in doing dumb things dangerously well. Enter Kukaku Shiba, wooden arm, explosive personality, and literal explosives, and her little brother Ganju, who agrees to help. The plan? Fire the group out of a cannon, like physically launch them through the barrier in a giant spiritual cannonball. Everyone channels their spiritual pressure, basically Bleach's version of DBZ power levels, into an orb to stabilize it. Too much and it explodes, too little and it fizzles out. Somehow, it works. Though, in true anime fashion, when they crash, they all get scattered like a dropped bag of marbles. Ichigo and Ganju land together. Chad ends up solo, Orihime and Uryu pair up, and Yororichi is off doing her ninja thing. The first people that Ichigo and Ganju run into? Ikaku and Yumichika, naturally. Ichigo beats Ikaku after a solid duel, and from there, the group starts taking on random squads as they try to reach Rukia's prison. It's the classic we split the party anime arc, and it's glorious chaos. Eventually, Ichigo squares up with Kinpachi Zaraki, and against all odds, he actually wins. Barely, like collapsed mid-swing barely. Around the same time, Uryu faces off against Captain Mayuri Korosuchi, which is less of a fight and more of a psychological horror show. Uryu squeaks out a victory, but let's be real, no one beats Mayuri, they just survive him. Meanwhile, Ichigo's tearing through the ranks again. His momentum takes him straight to Byakuya Kuchiki, who proceeds to beat the orange off his hair with zero effort. Byakuya, calm, graceful, and absolutely ruthless, Ichigo is outclassed in every possible way until Yororichi swoops in to save him. She whisks him away to a secret training ground where she reveals the next level of the Soul Reaper power, Bankai. It's the ultimate form of a Zanpakuto, and mastering it usually takes 10 years. Ichigo gets about 3 days. No pressure.
Oh, come on!
While Ichigo's busy trying not to die from training, something else happens. Captain Aizen is murdered. That's right. Mr. Nice Guy himself is found dead, impaled on a wall like a piece of macabre art. The news sends shockwaves through the Soul Society. Captain Toshiro Hisugaya immediately suspects Gin Ichimaru, which is fair. Gin looks like he wakes up every morning and practices suspicious smirks. To make things worse, we find out that the Soul Society is run by a secretive governing council called the Central 46. Basically a room full of old dudes who decide everything. It's like the anime version of Congress. And of course, these geniuses decide to move up Rukia's execution date, because why not add fuel to the chaos fire? Meanwhile, Renji, fresh off losing to Ichigo, has a change of heart. He decides he wants to save Rukia too, and begins his own Bankai training, joining Ichigo and Yororichi in their secret hideout. As Rukia's execution date looms closer, Renji confronts Byakuya one last time, pleading with him to stop this madness. Byakuya responds by putting Renji back in the dirt, classic older brother energy. Meanwhile, Toshiro Ukitake, Rukia's captain, has been secretly working on a way to stop the execution. At the same time, Hitsugaya discovers something terrifying. The entire Central 46 Council has been slaughtered, every single one of them. And the culprit? Aizen. That's right. Harmless, soft-spoken, teacherly, Aizen was never dead. He staged his own murder to set his plan in motion. Fun side note, when this happened, my wife yelled at the TV, "They killed the cool captain, those dicks!" Meanwhile, I'm sitting there with full foreknowledge, just nodding in silence like, oh honey. Turns out, Aizen's been manipulating everyone. He wants a weapon called the Sokyoku, a massive halberd used for Soul Reaper executions, supposedly holding the power of 1 million Zanpakuto. Well, Joshiro and Shunsui realized this and decided to destroy it before Aizen could use it. Earlier, Ichigo had already interrupted the execution by blocking the Sokyoku with his sword. Classic hero entrance moment. Now, with the weapon destroyed, we reach the big showdown, Ichigo versus Byakuya. Round 2. Ichigo reveals his trump card. He's achieved Bankai, and his sword, Zangetsu, has evolved into a sleek black katana. The speed boost alone shocks everyone. During the fight, Ichigo almost loses control as the hollow side of his soul begins to surface, but he manages to reel it back in. Eventually, he defeats Byakuya in one of the best fights of the series, equal parts pride, grief, and spiritual fireworks. But just when things start to settle, Aizen walks in, and he's not alone. With him are Kaname Tosen and Gin Ichimaru, two captains who have secretly been on his side the whole time. So, what was all of this for? Aizen's been after something called the Hogyoku, an artifact that was secretly embedded in Rukia's Gigai by Kisuke Urahara after she gave her powers to Ichigo. The Hogyoku can blur the line between Hollows and Soul Reapers. Basically, it's a cheat code for godhood. Aizen's orchestrated everything. Rukia's arrest, her execution, the chaos among the captains, all to get close enough to extract it. His Zanpakuto has the ability to completely hypnotize anyone who sees it. Full sensory manipulation. That's how he tricked the entire Soul Society into dancing to his tune. And once he's revealed himself, he casually pulls the Hogyoku out of Rukia's body like it's no big deal. Easy, barely an inconvenience.
Actually, it's gonna be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Oh, really?
With the artifact in hand, Aizen, Tosen, and Gin peace out, ascending into the sky and vanishing into Hueco Mundo to start whatever insane experiment they've got planned next. Ichigo tries to stop him, but gets swatted away effortlessly. The power gap is ridiculous. Aizen is in another league entirely. With the truth out, Ichigo and his friends are released. The Soul Society, realizing they kind of owe him one for saving their bureaucratic nightmare, grants Ichigo official recognition as a substitute Soul Reaper. He even gets a badge to prove it, a spiritual hall pass that lets him come and go from the Serete whenever he wants. The group returns to the world of the living to prepare for whatever comes next, and that marks the end of Bleach's first major saga, roughly episode 63. When I finished this arc, I was hooked. The fights, incredible. The powers, wild. The characters, genuinely layered and likable. It felt like the perfect balance between action, mystery, and emotional payoff. And then it happened. The filler. Before I dive into the filler that's about to hit, I just want to say a few words. These first arcs, peak Bleach. This was the series firing on all cylinders. It hooked me instantly. I had to know more. I needed to know more. I didn't want it to stop. I was 2 steps away from hitting the street corner looking for somebody to hook me up with that next Bleach fix. Every episode felt electric. The characters had perfect chemistry, the style was unmatched, and the powers absolutely mind-blowing. The plot was sharp, easy to follow, but layered enough to keep you thinking. The humor landed, the pacing clicked, and the stakes felt real. Every new twist, every shocking reveal, it all hit like an earthquake. Bleach wasn't just good, it was defining its own genre while it was still being written. It built a foundation, and then completely over-delivered on it. But, as I hinted before, something was about to change that. The filler was coming. Now, to be fair, Bleach had dropped a few filler episodes before, and they weren't awful. But this was the first major filler arc, and it dragged. The Bount arc, clocking it at a painful 44 episodes, introduced an entirely new faction of villains. The Bounts, basically spiritual vampires who fed on human souls. They each control a doll, a spirit-based companion used for combat. The Bounts were created in the Soul Society and now wanted revenge. It's not terrible storytelling, but it's long. Way too long. They all die except one, who's quietly swept under the rug and never mentioned again. We don't talk about Bruno, and apparently, we don't talk about Bounce either. After filler hell, we get back to the real plot, the Arrancar arc, where the story hits its second wind. 2 new types of characters emerge, Arrancars and Visored. The Arrancars are hollows that have transcended their monster form, removing their masks and gaining Shinigami-like powers. Think of them like anti-Soul Reapers, white-clad uniforms and Zanpakuto-like weapons, the evil mirror version of everything we've seen so far. They come from Hueco Mundo, where Aizen's been busy manufacturing them with the Hogyoku. Essentially, he's building an army of super hollows to declare war on both worlds. And trust me, this is where Bleach gets insane. The Visored. Former Soul Reapers who can don hollow masks to spike their spiritual pressure. They clock that Ichigo's got an inner hollow, the thing that tried to hijack him versus Byakuya, and offer to help him control it. Alright, so a few faces that we need to get to know. Grimmjow Jaggerjacks. The Arrancar are ranked, and the top brass are the Espada, number 1 through 10. Grimmjow is number 6, and radiates too cool for school. Look, posture, aura, based. Ulquiorra Cypher, the soft-spoken, dead-eyed emo of the squad, and lethal. He's Espada number 4. Shinji Hiraku, the first Visored to approach Ichigo, rolls in as a transfer student, immediately clocking Ichigo's power control issues. There are more Visoreds in Arrancar, but these are the 3 that matter most right now. Ulquiorra and another Arrancar hit the world of the living, jumping Chad, Orihime, and Ichigo. Ichigo starts to hollowify, stalls out, and the team gets saved by Kisuke and Yoruichi. A day or 2 later, backup arrives from the Soul Society to defend Karakura town. Toshiro, Rangiku, Ikkaku, Yumichika, and Rukia. Another Arrancar squad attacks, this time led by Grimmjow. We finally see Rukia Shikai, and it's awesome. Ichigo fights Grimmjow and gets mauled. A last-ditch Getsuga Tensho barely leaves a scar on Grimmjow's chest. They only stop because Kaname shows up and orders Grimmjow back to Hueco Mundo. Bruised ego in hand, Ichigo chooses the Visoreds and starts training to leash his inner hollow. Meanwhile, Orihime is summoned to the Soul Society, Chad and Renji grind in Kisuke's basement, and Uryo trains with his dad in the hospital basement. Apparently basements are S tier for power-ups. Also, a forgotten reveal, Ichigo's dad, Ishin, is a Soul Reaper whose powers were lost. He tells Kon and asks him to keep it from Ichigo for now. Ichigo eventually overcomes the hollow takeovers and keeps training, until the real gut punch. Aizen kidnaps Orihime and takes her to Hueco Mundo. She's given one day in the world of the living to say goodbye, and only one person is allowed to see her. She's given a bracelet that lets her move like a spirit. She uses it to confess to Ichigo that she loves him, and then SAs him. Once she's gone, Ichigo asks the Soul Society if they're launching a rescue, and the answer is basically nope. So Ichigo does what Ichigo does. He launches his own assault on Hueco Mundo with Chad and Uryu. Kisuke opens the gate. Inside, they scrap through a gauntlet, picking up 3 unhinged but lovable Arrancar weirdos. Nell, a childlike Arrancar with a cracked mask, and her 2 Chaos Gremlins, Dondachaka and Pesce, pure comic relief, only slightly feral. Rukia and Renji also head in, technically not disobeying, but absolutely ignoring Yamamoto, who explicitly said there would be no rescue. Target acquired. The giant palace in the desert. Los Nachos. Oh, wait, no. Las Noches. Inside, the party splits up, and they clear out former Espada. Then they start running into the current Espada. Ichigo runs into Ulquiorra, assumes he's the top rank, but soon gets corrected, showing that he's number 4. And then Ulquiorra punches a hole in his chest right where his hollow hole is, casually. Grimmjow then locks Ulquiorra away in a pocket dimension and drags Orihime over to heal Ichigo because he wants a proper fight. It's brutal and gorgeous. Ichigo nearly loses until Orihime, shaken, terrified, cheers him on, and he powers through to finish Grimmjow. Nell, who had been separated with Ichigo, tackles him in tears and was relieved he's still alive. Alright, let's break away from story time for a second. So with the defeat of Grimmjow and yet another filler arc rolling in, things really started to sour for me personally. Up until that point, I was locked in. The introduction of the Arrancars and the Visoreds had me hooked. There were so many new layers being added, so many mysteries. Sure, some of these questions were starting to get answered, but my curiosity was burning hotter with every episode. The Visoreds were fascinating. They clearly had Soul Reaper roots, but where did they come from? Who were they really? And the Arrancar, following a Soul Reaper? That was unheard of. What was their motivation? And why were they suddenly so willing to set aside centuries of conflict? Just when it felt like we were finally digging into those answers, the animation team had to set up another filler arc. Now, to be fair, I don't think all of those filler arcs were bad. Some were actually decent on their own, but others, they completely missed the point. Like, they were written to exist, not to entertain. And that's what made it sting. Every time the story built momentum, every time it felt like Bleach was finally hitting the next gear, we'd slam the brakes and spin off into a side story nobody asked for. It was just distracting. It was messy. It felt forced. I'll dig into that deeper later, but this was definitely the moment where Bleach started losing that spark it once had. Cue another filler detour. 21 episodes about a new squad captain and a noble girl from the Serete. It's basically Aizen arc Mad Libs. Everyone dies except the noble, who returns later with her 2 bodyguards for a tiny 2-episode encore. We're now at episode 189 and a bit past halfway. Back to canon. We resume right after Ichigo versus Grimmjow. Another Espada shows up, finishes off Grimmjow, and beats down the already injured Ichigo. The shock triggers Nell to transform into her adult form, and, she brings a lot of personality to the arena. She keeps fighting while Orihime tries to heal Ichigo. Reveal: Nell was once Espada number 3 before her mask cracked and she reverted to a child. She's wearing the same outfit she had as a kid, which barely covers the grown-up situation. She's about to finish the Espada pounding on Ichigo when all hell breaks loose. Nell's adult form doesn't last long. It reverts back to her child form. Typical anime luck. Power-up runs out the second it matters. And just when all hope seems lost for our heroes, Ichigo, Uryu, Renji, Rukia, Chad, Dondachaka, and Pesce help arrives in glorious fashion. From the sky descends 4 captains of the Soul Society: Mayuri, Kinpachi, Byakuya, and Unohana. It's like the cavalry showed up with god-tier cheat codes. Unohana and her team immediately start healing everyone, including the fallen Arrancar, because even the bad guys need patching up when she's around. Meanwhile, Kinpachi, Byakuya, and Mayuri take on the Espada head-to-head. Each of them wins their fights. not without taking some damage. Well, except Mayuri. That guy wipes the floor with his opponent like it's just another day of the week and barely lifts a finger. Absolute menace. But just when victory seems certain, another Espada swoops in and kidnaps Orihime, dragging her back to Aizen, because of course she gets kidnapped again. Shortly after, Aizen announces that he's heading to the world of the living, and the focus shifts back in time. We jump back to the past to learn where the Visoreds and Kisuke Uruhara really came from. Turns out all the Visoreds were captains and lieutenants in the Soul Society, and Kisuke was the captain of Squad 12, which Mayuri now commands. They became test subjects for Aizen's early experiments, his attempts to hollow-ify Soul Reapers. Kisuke, realizing what Aizen had done, saved them before they fully transformed and hid them in the human world using Gigai, artificial bodies, so that the Soul Society wouldn't execute them as criminals. Kisuke himself was blamed for Aizen's crimes and forced into exile. He escaped to the world of living too, quietly working to undo Aizen's damage and eventually stop him. It's a tight 6-episode flashback, but it does a great job of filling in all the blanks. The next big chunk, episodes 213 to 229, covers the captains and lieutenants facing off against Aizen's top Espada. One standout here, Tyr Harryville, Espada number 3, and her terrifying trio of underlings known as Fraccione, Imalu Apaki, Francesca Emila Rose, and Sayan Song Sun. These three can literally sacrifice their left arms to summon a rampaging beast made of pure rage energy. It's as insane as it sounds, and it's awesome. Aizen's grand plan finally becomes clear. He's targeting Karakura town itself. The reason? It's overflowing with spiritual energy. Aizen wants to use it as a sacrificial site to forge something called the Oaken Key, a divine artifact that opens the gate to the Soul King's palace. His goal? To super the Soul King and become God. Classic villain stuff. Luckily, Kisuke and the Soul Society anticipated this. They secretly moved the real Karakura town into the Soul Society and replaced it with a replica. So, Aizen's standing in a replica the whole time, fighting ghosts in a ghost town. This arc starts and ends with a couple filler episodes, but the core of it is pure fire. Once again, we're diving into another filler arc. And I'll be real with you. Back when I was watching Bleach for the first time, this is around the point where I fell off. Everything after this stretch, that was all new to me when I rewatched it a year ago. I was invested, I was into it, but the moment we stepped out of the main story again to start another random arc, my reaction was basically, really dude, again? However, this next filler arc felt different. It wasn't just another random throwaway detour. It actually mattered. It had depth. It had emotional weight. Honestly, it was strong enough to stand beside the main story, and in some ways, it eventually does tie back in. That's what made it frustrating though, even for die-hard fans. Bleach was like an engine that kept stalling. You could feel the power there, you could hear it trying to roar back to life, but every time it started gaining traction, it sputtered. Still buried beneath all that filler fatigue was something worth admiring. We got deeper insight into the characters' backstories, and that showed just how much world building Kubo had tucked away in this universe. And of course, there was Aizen, the man playing 5D chess while everyone else was still figuring out checkers. Seeing how far ahead his plans went, how every twist, every betrayal, every accident was part of his design, made me stop and go, alright, damn bro. Anyways, before the final showdown, we get one of the best filler arcs in Bleach, the Zanpakuto Rebellion. It runs for 35 episodes and splits into 2 sub-arcs, exploring what happens when the Zanpakuto spirits, the sentient beings inside every sword, gain physical forms and rebel against their masters. It's long, but it's so worth it. We get to see personality concepts for nearly every major weapon, and the designs are top tier. It even became semi-canon later when Kubo uses the design for one of the Zanpakuto spirits later in TYBW. You know an arc's good when the creator calls back to it years later. Now, for the big one, episodes 266 to 316, the climactic showdown between Aizen and literally everyone. We start with Ichigo versus Ulquiorra. Round 2, Ulquiorra kills Ichigo, stops his heart completely, and that's when Ichigo goes full hollow berserker mode, resurrecting and obliterating Ulquiorra without effort. His hollow mask evolves during each fight, reflecting his loss of control. And after that, Ichigo heads to Karakura town, where the court guard, captains, and lieutenants are battling the remaining Espada. The Visoreds show up too, ready to throw hands and promptly get the crap kicked out of them. Still, they buy time. One by one, the Arrancar fall. Then comes Kaname Tosen's last stand. He fights his old lieutenant Shunui and his friend Sajin. They defeat him, and then Aizen kills him. Captain Yamamoto faces Aizen next. It's brutal. Yamamoto loses an arm but still refuses to back down. Finally, Ichigo arrives. Aizen, now fused with the Hogyoku, has evolved beyond reason, his form consistently shifting between god and monster. After wiping out most opposition, Aizen travels to the Soul Society to begin creating the Okenki, but when he gets there, Gin turns on him. Turns out Gin's been biding his time for hundreds of episodes, pretending to be evil just to get close enough to kill Aizen, who hurt Rangiku when they were kids. His betrayal hits hard. Gin cuts the Hogyoku out of Aizen and nearly kills him. For a moment, you think he did, but the Hogyoku refuses with Aizen, evolving him again. Hollow, half Soul Reaper, pure nightmare fuel. He kills Gin and starts hunting Ichigo's classmates through Karakura town. Meanwhile, Ichigo and Isshin have been traveling through the Precipice World, a dimensional corridor connecting the living world to the Soul Society. Time flows differently there, basically Bleach's version of the hyperbolic time chamber. Isshin explains that Ichigo needs to learn the final Getsuga Tensho, a technique that fuses him completely with his Zanpakuto spirit. It'll give him the power to defeat Aizen, but at the cost of all of his Soul Reaper powers. Once used, it's gone forever. Ichigo agrees. Isshin maintains the collapsing dimension with his own spiritual pressure as Ichigo trains inside. When they return, Aizen is about to kill Ichigo's friends, and Ichigo's new form is different. Longer hair, dark aura, sword fused into his arm. Aizen mocks him, tries to monologue, and Ichigo grabs him by the face, mid-sentence, and flies him to a new battlefield.
Destroy Karakura town. You will.
Aizen starts transforming again, preaching about superiority and divinity, but Ichigo doesn't even blink. He absolutely demolishes him. Then comes one of the coldest scenes in Bleach history. Ichigo activates the final Getsuga Tensho. Zangetsu turns into a storm of black spiritual pressure, and Ichigo delivers a single, devastating slash that ends the fight. Except, not quite. The Hogyoku regenerates Aizen again, until Kisuke Urahara appears. Turns out that a minor attack he had landed on Aizen earlier, it was a setup for a secret Kido seal designed specifically to trap him. The spell takes hold, and the god falls. Aizen is defeated. He's imprisoned deep within the Soul Society, sealed away, unable to escape. And just like that, the longest, wildest saga in Bleach, possibly one of the most ambitious arcs in shonen anime, comes to a close. After the dust settles from the Aizen War, the Soul Society tells Ichigo that he still has his powers, but they won't last long. The technique he used, Final Getsuga Tensho, basically fried his spiritual pressure like a battery phone at 1%. It's only a matter of time before the meter hits zero, and just like that, the monumental arc, hundreds of episodes, dozens of battles, and a god-level villain comes to a close. So naturally, what do we follow this up with? Another filler arc. So at this point, it would seem like the most natural conclusion would be to just end the series. The big bad we've been building toward for over 300 episodes is finally down. The story's wrapped, the hero's victorious, credits should be rolling. But nope, they pull one of my least favorite anime moves. The good old "we're not done here yet" trick. Or as I like to call it, the "I didn't hear no bell" moment. It always feels desperate, like they're grasping at straws, doing anything to keep the show alive just a bit longer. And honestly, I always wonder, how do you even follow up something that huge? You've spent literal years building up to this massive world-ending conflict. How do you top that? There are other anime that try the same thing, and it's always infuriating. You finish the climactic battle, the story feels complete, and then suddenly they throw in a one-note villain who shows up for a few episodes just to give the main cast something to do. Like, come on. How are we supposed to take that seriously? You can't recreate the same weight, the same anticipation after something that big. It's impossible. But hey, before we get there, there's still one more thing to talk about. One last detour. Let's move on to the final filler arc. Yep, the Gote 13 Invading Army arc. This time, some random dude creates clones of every captain and lieutenant in the Soul Society, forcing them all to fight their evil doppelgangers. Because reasons? He's mad at the Soul Society, I guess. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Honestly, I could have lived my entire life without it. The only real function of this arc is to stall for time so Kubo could work on the manga. The only interesting thread is how the show toys with Ichigo's power loss. Instead of him cleanly losing his abilities, the writers drag it out, episode after episode, slowly draining his strength until you're practically begging for it to be over. That brings us to the final story arc of the original Bleach anime, episodes 343 to 366. At this point, Ichigo's officially powerless. He's living life as a normal high school student again, trying not to lose his mind. Then he is reminded there was another substitute Soul Reaper before him. That guy's name was Kugo Ginjo. He doesn't reveal his identity to Ichigo until much later. Ginjo and his crew approach Ichigo, introducing themselves as Fullbringers, humans born with spiritual powers derived from hollow energy. They can channel their souls into objects, kind of like turning your favorite personal item into a weapon. Ginjo tells Ichigo they can help him regain his powers. The deal helped them defeat a rogue Fullbringer named Shukuro Tsukishima, whose ability lets him insert himself into people's memories. He literally cuts someone and suddenly they remember him as their childhood best friend. Absolute nightmare fuel. Ichigo agrees, trains, and eventually masters his new Fullbringer powers, only for Ginjo to stab him in the back. Metaphorically and literally. Turns out the whole "we'll help you" plan was a setup. Ginjo restores Ichigo's powers just so he can steal them, powering up him and his team. Oh, and plot twist number 2, Ginjo was the original substitute Soul Reaper, and he's planning to start a war with the Soul Society for betraying him years ago. Ichigo's left powerless again, until salvation arrives in the form of Rukia, who stabs him through the chest with a sword forged from the combined spiritual pressure of Kisuke, Isshin, and several captains and lieutenants. Captain Yamamoto himself authorized it as repayment for everything Ichigo had done to save the Soul Society, and it works. Ichigo regains his Soul Reaper abilities, stronger than ever. He faces Ginjo one last time, and the captains and lieutenants fight Ginjo's followers, including Tsukishima, while Ichigo brings the hammer down on Ginjo himself. After a hard-fought battle, Ichigo wins, kills Ginjo, and then, showing the maturity that defines him, requests permission to return Ginjo's body to the world of the living, and the Soul Society agrees. Bleach ends with Ichigo once again a full-fledged Soul Reaper, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever's next. So, that's it. After 366 episodes, Bleach finally wraps up. Well, sort of. Let's be real here. When 45% of your episodes are filler, that's a lot of extra story to wade through. And honestly, that's one of my biggest gripes with this era of anime. They build and build and build towards something massive. Then, just when you're frothing at the mouth for payoff, they go, but wait, there's more, and drop 3 side stories that don't matter. That said, the ending of the original Bleach actually felt final. It tied things up neatly, gave Ichigo closure, and bowed out gracefully. I was satisfied. I didn't even know at the time that the manga kept going. I thought this was it. And honestly, if it had ended there, it would have been a solid send-off. But the truth is, while the anime stopped, the manga never missed a beat. Kubo kept writing, kept expanding the world, and kept building towards something bigger. The studio just didn't want to keep hammering out filler arcs while waiting for enough source material to adapt. Smart move, honestly, considering Bleach had started dropping filler mid-fight like a bad commercial break. And then, after almost a decade of silence, Bleach returned. The 1,000-Year Blood War. Released for the 20th anniversary of the manga, this wasn't just a comeback, it was a rebirth. No filler, no fluff, just pure storytelling and relentless action. This is where Bleach grew up. Before we dive into the blood and chaos, let's make one thing clear. The 1,000-Year Blood War isn't technically a sequel. It's the final arc of Bleach. Kubo never stopped writing the manga. Studio Pierrot just wrapped up the original anime back in 2012 to let the source material catch up. That said, it feels like a sequel. It's sharper, meaner, more cinematic, and way more violent. The tone has grown up, the pacing is brutal, and the blood? Oh, the blood is practically a supporting character. This isn't your Saturday morning Bleach. This is Bleach Premium Cut Edition. A big contributing factor to this is because of the negative reception towards the ending of Bleach's manga. Due to Kubo's health being an issue, he felt forced to bring it to a close sooner than later. Thanks to his direct involvement and oversight with this version of the story, we see that it's very much the adaptation that we wanted. The anime opens with a haunting chant about the Quincy King. From there, we cut to the Soul Society's Research and Development Department, where Mayuri, now looking like an alien peacock, detects a massive spike in hollows being erased from existence. Not purified, erased, gone. He makes it clear that only one group could be responsible for something like this, the Quincy's. Meanwhile, back in Karakura town, we meet two new Soul Reapers fresh out of training. One's gung-ho, the other is shaking in his sandals. When the timid one chickens out, his partner storms off like, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Naturally, seconds later, the coward is ambushed by a massive hollow. As he's cornered, terrified, and about to become Monster Chow, a Getsuga Tensho slices through the air, instantly cutting a hollow in two. Quincy arrow follows, taking off another hollow's hand. Then Chad leaps across rooftops, catching the wounded Soul Reaper like an action hero. Orihime appears, using her healing powers to stabilize the victims. Her demeanor's calmer now, older, grounded, and then it happens. The camera pans, the music drops. Ichigo Kurosaki steps onto the rooftop, Zangetsu in hand, eyes burning with resolve. The entire gang is back, and as they cut through the hollows with surgical precision, you realize this isn't nostalgia, it's evolution. These aren't kids anymore. This is a squad of veterans, and they're here to remind you why Bleach was a cultural reset. And it hits. No matter how many times I've watched this, it hits. 2 days later, the young Soul Reaper wakes up in Ichigo's room, confused and alive. The crew, Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, and Uryu, sit around catching up on weird disturbances in town. The young Soul Reaper starts to worry about his friend, whom then walks in the room, and they both share a good cry. Out of nowhere, some random dude appears in Ichigo's window, steps on his bed, and starts monologuing like an uninvited podcast guest. Ichigo politely tells him to get off his bed. Dude ignores him, so Ichigo transforms into his Soul Reaper form and physically throws him out the window. The rest of the gang watches unfazed, kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer supporting characters. Once they're alone, the stranger starts baiting Ichigo into releasing his Bankai. Ichigo realizes this guy's in a wrong car, but something's off. The man doesn't think he's one. Before Ichigo can dig deeper, we cut to the Soul Society, where hooded figures dressed in white suddenly appear in Captain Yamamoto's chambers. Without hesitation, they kill one of the guards, instantly. They then inform Yamamoto that war is coming to the Soul Society, and it will be there soon. Then, to make their point and demonstrate their resolve, a blue Quincy arrow pierces Lieutenant Chojiro, pinning him to the wall and killing him on the spot. Yamamoto tries to strike back, but the intruders vanish before he can even blink. Back in Karakura, Ichigo and the mysterious Arrancar clash. The stranger keeps trying to bait Ichigo into using his Bankai, and when Ichigo finally does, the Arrancar activates a strange device to seal it. It fails, spectacularly. Ichigo nearly cuts him in half, but before he can drag him back for questioning, the man dissolves into black smoke and disappears. Something big is happening. Then we finally see him, a towering figure, calm, regal, and terrifying. Yhwach Blast. Yhwach, the king of the Quincy's. If it wasn't clear before, it is now. The Soul Society's new enemy is the long-forgotten race they thought they'd wiped out centuries ago. Inside his palace, Yhwach sits on a throne as his subordinates bicker. One of them speaks out of turn, and Yhwach immediately vaporizes him. Then, in a move that's both petty and horrifying, he kills the Quincy who delivered the declaration of war to Yamamoto and executes the Arrancar recruit for good measure. It's like he's saying, no loose ends, no excuses, no mercy. Meanwhile, in Hueco Mundo, chaos reigns. Nell and Pesce, yes, the same lovable weirdos from the Arrancar arc, burst into Ichigo's world with shocking news. Tier Haribel, the former third Espada who took over Hueco Mundo after Aizen's fall, has been captured. Yhwach and his Quincy army have stormed Hueco Mundo, taking it for themselves and enslaving hollows and Arrancar alike. It's no longer just a hollow wasteland, it's occupied territory. Ichigo, of course, doesn't hesitate. Another war has begun, and this time, it's personal. So, what does Ichigo do when he hears Hueco Mundo is being taken over? What else would Ichigo do? He packs his bags and goes. He, Chad, Orihime, Nell, Pesce, and Kisuke Uruhara head straight for Hueco Mundo to figure out what's going on, and to find Donda Chaka, because apparently he got left behind in this chaos. Meanwhile, Uryu, the only Quincy in the group, decides to stay behind. Kind of awkward, but hey, when the people asking for help are your sworn enemies, it makes sense to sit this one out. Once Ichigo and company arrive, it's immediately clear something's off. Hueco Mundo is under siege by soldiers wielding blue reishi weapons. You know, the Quincy energy. At this point, everyone's like, wait, didn't we establish Uryu was the last one alive? Yeah, well, about that. Cut to a grim scene. A group of Arrancar lined up like prisoners. Some Quincy officer, one of Yhwach's goons, offers them a choice. Join the army or die. Classic fascist energy. Most of them choose wrong because this lunatic proceeds to massacre nearly everyone on the spot. Enter Aizen's former backup dancers. Those two women from his private guard whose purpose was always ambiguous at best. They show up full of attitude and immediately get their handed to them. Like, blink and they're gone. I don't even know if you can count it as a fight. But then things start to get interesting. Out of nowhere, Haribel's Frazione, her loyal trio from back in the day, step in to challenge this psycho. The Quincy introduces him as Kilgay Opie, pronounced crazy with a Q. And that's where shit gets weird. Meanwhile, back in the world of the living, Uryu reads his grandfather's old journal and learns the truth about the Wanderreich, the secret Quincy empire that's been hiding in the shadows for 1,000 years. Apparently, it's connected to his lineage and to Yhwach himself. The anime doesn't really spell it out for you at this point, and if it did, I must have blinked and missed it because we don't see Uryu again for quite a while. Back in Hueco Mundo, the Frazione actually hold their own for a few minutes against Kilgay, but this guy's built different. Eventually, Ichigo and the gang show up and intervene, and Kilgay exposition dumps while fighting Ichigo. He eventually activates his Vollständisch, basically Quincy Super Saiyan mode. Wings, halo, the whole angelic aesthetic. It's the Quincy equivalent of a Bankai, only way flashier. He starts absorbing reishi like it's protein powder. The Frazione respond by jumping back in and doing their give up our arms and summon the Rage Beast move, yeah, the same one from earlier, and for a brief second it looks like they've actually killed him. Spoiler, they haven't. Kilgay absorbs the beast too, mutating into this hideous hybrid of Quincy and Hollow. Think if Sephiroth and a kaiju had a baby. Just as it seems like the Frazione are toast, Ichigo swoops back in, slicing through the halo on Kilgay's head and shuts down his absorption ability. It's a solid fight, but things are about to go from wild to utterly catastrophic. While Ichigo is busy throwing hands in Hueco Mundo, the Soul Society gets hit hard. This isn't an invasion, it's a massacre. Within minutes, buildings are collapsing, explosions are ripping through the Serete, and blood is flying through the air like confetti. Lieutenant Kira from Squad 3 is obliterated before anyone even knows what's happening. You barely see it, it's that fast. This is the moment you realize the 1,000-year blood war isn't playing around. Gone are the days of low-stakes anime scuffles and dramatic speeches mid-fight. This is Bleach for grown-ups. Every frame screams carnage. Every scream sounds final. Now it's time to meet the main event, the Stern Ritter, Yhwach's elite Quincy army. Each member is assigned a letter from A to Z, with an epithet that defines their power. They're handpicked, brutal, and unhinged. Let's run through the roster. Ugrim Hashval, B, the balance, Yhwach's right-hand man. Calm, collected, and lethal. Unlike most Quincy's, he doesn't use a bow, he wields a sword. Think of him as the Quincy version of Byakuya. Bambietta, Basterbine. E, the Explode. Loud, overconfident, and surrounded by chaos. She's got her own little girl squad, Candace Catnip, Giselle Guvel, Lolito Lambert, and Minia Mukalan. They're like a murderous Sailor Moon group if everyone was on coke and betrayal. They're technically friends, but every interaction screams, we're one bad day away from killing each other. Pepe Wakabrada. L. The Love. Oh boy. This guy, he's a tiny love-struck maniac obsessed with love and controlling others through it. He doesn't fight his enemies so much as he emotionally manipulates them into killing each other. File him under uncomfortable but interesting. As not. F. The Fear. I thought this was a woman the first time I saw him, but nope. As not is a nightmare made of fear. His ability makes his victims relive terror so pure that even in death they keep screaming. Literally. forever. This dude gives me actual chills. Masque de Masculine. S. The superstar. The pro wrestler Quincy. I'm not kidding. Cape, star motif, full lucha energy. Every fight he treats like a WWE match, complete with his hype man, James, who cheers him on. If James yells loud enough, Masque literally powers back up from the brink of death. The man's a meme and I love it. Hang Do. I, the Iron. Stoic and serious. Kind of like if Bruce Lee were a Quincy. His defining trait? He believes only Yhwach can kill him. Honestly, fair enough. Basby. H. The Heat. He's got a mohawk, fire powers, and a punk rock attitude. Picture Zuko from Avatar if he listened to My Chemical Romance. His backstory is tragic and surprisingly deep. It's one of the best parts of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. And then we've got the background players. Robert Acutron in The Numb. A gun-wielding Quincy with reishi bullets. He's there to remind you that guns still exist in the Bleach universe. BG9. K. The Unknown. Possibly a robot? Possibly a cyborg? Definitely terrifying. Nanana Najakup. U. The Underbelly. Checkerboard teeth, weird blindfold, creepy energy. Doesn't do much, but he's there. And that's our setup. The Soul Society's burning, the Quincy's are back from extinction, and Yhwach, the so-called father of all Quincy's, has declared total war. If you thought Bleach was edgy before, buckle up. This is Bleach for the kids who grew up watching it, and now have to watch their heroes die. Meanwhile, in the Serete, it's already hell on earth or heaven? Nah. Smoke, blood, and bodies everywhere. The once untouchable Soul Reapers, and characters who felt wrapped in enough plot armor to survive a nuke, are being slaughtered like NPCs. The Stern Ritter aren't just powerful, they're terrifyingly efficient. Within minutes, everything's in chaos. Captains are scrambling, lieutenants are dying, and the entire Soul Society realizes far too late that they've underestimated the enemy. All across the Serete, the captains engage the Quincy. Toshiro faces off against Kang, Su Feng fights BG9, Sajin charges into battle against Bambietta, and Byakuya and Renji take on the Nightmare himself as Not. From the very start, it's clear the Soul Reapers are outclassed. The Quincy's aren't sealing Bankai like they believed Ichigo's earlier opponent was trying to do, they're stealing them outright. Even though the Gotei 13 were warned about Ichigo's encounter, the captains still unleashed their ultimate forms like total amateurs. Suifong, Toshiro, Sajin, and Byakuya all lose their Bankai instantly. Meanwhile, Mayuri, in peak mad scientist fashion, is absolutely losing his mind in the background because he literally told them not to do that. He was trying to analyze the enemy's power, but by the time he figures it out, it's already too late. The Serete is crumbling and morale is gone. Enter Kinpachi, strolling through the battlefield like he's late for lunch, dragging the body of a dead Stern Ritter behind him. He finds Yhwach and challenges him head on. Bad move. Yhwach doesn't even flinch. Kinpachi might be the Soul Society's pit bull, but compared to Yhwach, he's a toddler with a foam sword. Yhwach effortlessly overpowers him, leaving him broken on the ground. And that's when Ginryosai, the head captain, decides he's had enough. The oldest, baddest man in Bleach history steps onto the battlefield, and it's like the air itself ignites. He releases his Bankai, Zanka no Tachi, the blade that turns everything it touches into ash. It's one of the most incredible scenes in the entire series. The sheer intensity of his spiritual pressure is so overwhelming that the other captains can feel it from miles away. We flash back to 1,000 years ago, the last time Yamamoto fought Yhwach. It's raw, primal, and personal. The two exchange blows like ancient gods locked in a grudge match that's lasted centuries. When Yamamoto unleashes his full power, it's clear this is the fight of his life. Yhwach can't even steal his Bankai because the heat and energy are too immense to contain. For a moment, it looks like Yamamoto wins. He beats Yhwach and strikes him down. Except, it's not him. The Yhwach he killed was a decoy. The real Yhwach was never there. He's been visiting Aizen in his underground prison, asking him to join forces in his conquest of the Soul Society. In typical Aizen fashion, he declines, saying he doesn't take orders from anyone. When Yhwach returns to the battlefield, he effortlessly takes Yamamoto's Bankai for himself. With barely a word, he slices the head captain clean in half. The Soul Society's greatest warrior, gone in a single swing. We're only 7 episodes in, and everything already feels different. The world is darker now, not metaphorically, but literally. The only light left comes from the fire still burning across the Soul Society, the aftermath of the Stern Ritter's rampage. The death of the head captain and his lieutenants hits like a gut punch. It sends a wave of fear through every corner of the Soul Society. The kind of fear so deep, you can't help but wonder, who could possibly stand against enemies this powerful? The stakes have never felt higher. The plan's completely out the window. Everything that once felt certain is gone. And honestly, I was in love. Bleach had changed. The tone, the tension, the atmosphere, it all shifted overnight. This wasn't the same series we left behind years ago. This was something sharper, something meaner. This was Bleach reborn, the new peak of what the series was always meant to be. Meanwhile, back in Hueco Mundo, Ichigo and the gang are still fighting Kilge, who's mutated beyond recognition. Kisuke, ever the wild card, calls the Soul Society mid-battle to get a read on the situation. It's bad, like the apocalypse has already started and you're late bad. Kisuke launches a surprise attack that blows a hole straight through Kilge, seemingly killing him instantly. Then he tells Ichigo to go, head to the Soul Society now. He opens a Garganta portal to send Ichigo through. But right before Ichigo can escape, Kilge uses his dying breath to seal Ichigo in an energy prison in the middle of the Garganta. Now, Ichigo is trapped, completely helpless, while he can still hear his friends screaming for help through the communicator in his hand. He smashes the prison walls with everything he's got, his voice raw from shouting, nothing works. And then, suddenly, the cage opens. Ichigo bursts into the Research and Development Bureau, covered in blood and rage. He immediately sprints to the front lines, slicing down a random Stern Ritter like he's swatting a fly before finding Byakuya, barely clinging to life, defeated by his own stolen Bankai. Byakuya's last request, protect the Soul Society. Ichigo doesn't even respond, he just disappears, Byakuya already knowing his answer. Ichigo immediately confronts Yhwach and the atmosphere changes. For once, Yhwach seems hesitant. He even comments that he doesn't want to kill Ichigo, yet. But Ichigo isn't here for diplomacy. They clash and it's immediately clear Ichigo is out of his league. Yhwach toys with him, landing devastating blows. Just as Yhwach goes in for the kill, something strange happens. Ichigo blocks the strike, but not with his sword. It turns out that inside Ichigo flows Quincy blood. Awakened by the trap Kilge snared him in, his body instinctively activates Blut Vina, a defensive Quincy ability that prevents fatal damage. Before Ichigo can process what's happening, Yhwach senses his time is running out. The Quincy's can only exist outside of their hidden realm, the Wandenreich, for a limited period before they're pulled back in. As Yhwach prepares to retreat, Ichigo unleashes one final strike. Ugrim catches it mid-swing and shatters Ichigo's Bankai. He leaves Ichigo in the ruins of the Serete, his sword destroyed, his friends dying, and his world burning. The Quincy's vanish and silence falls. The aftermath is devastating. The Serete is in ruins, lieutenants are dead, many captains barely escaped with their lives, and morale is non-existent. Soifong's Bankai is gone, stolen by BG9, Bashiro loses his to Kang, Byakuya loses his to Asnot, and Sajin loses his to Bambietta. Lastly, Shunsui lost an eye in his fight with Robert. The entire Soul Society is broken. As the survivors regroup, Shunsui is promoted to head captain, stepping into Yamamoto's place. Not long after, a new group descends from the heavens, Squad Zero, the Royal Guard. These 5 former captains protect the Soul King himself. They've each created something integral to the Soul Society's very existence. And now, they've come down from their celestial palace to take care of some key pieces. Their first order of business, retrieving Byakuya, Rukia, Renji, and Ichigo, along with Ichigo's shattered Bankai, to take them to the Royal Realm for healing and reconstruction. To get to the Royal Realm, Squad Zero uses the same massive cannon that originally launched Ichigo into the Serete way back in the first arc. Full circle moment. Back on the ground, Shunsui, now the new head captain, gets to work cleaning up the mess. Central 46 isn't thrilled that the laid-back guy with a sake addiction is running the show, but Shunsui immediately proves why he's the best possible choice. First, he announces he wants 2 lieutenants. Central 46 starts losing their minds about breaking tradition, But Shunsui in full alpha mode reminds them they're the ones who wrote the rules that say he can. Then he basically tells them to shut up and go back to paperwork. Then he drops his next bombshell. He wants to teach Kinpachi how to use his Shikai. Cue the outrage again. Central 46 freaks out. Training Kinpachi to unlock his true power is like handing a nuclear bomb to a toddler. But Shunsui doesn't even care. He's seen what the Quincy's can do. If they want to survive, Kinpachi needs to evolve. And in order to do that, he needs to fight with Unohana. But there's a twist. Before she was the serene leader of Squad 4, Retsu Unohana was a literal demon on the battlefield. She was the first Kinpachi, the original bearer of the title. Long before she learned to heal, she lived for the fight. She was known as Yachiro Unohana. She and Zaraki actually met centuries ago in battle. Both blood-soaked maniacs who found something almost sacred in trying to kill each other. He was just a child then, but she saw his potential, and he's spent every fight since chasing that thrill again. Now, she's going to help him unlock it. Unohana summons Zaraki to the underground prison beneath Squad 1's barracks, deep enough that no one can interfere. There, they can fight to the death, and I mean literally, over and over again. Unohana kills him, heals him, and kills him again, forcing his body and mind to adapt each time until his hidden strength begins to reawaken. It's one of the most brutal and beautiful scenes in the entire series. Quiet, haunting, and symbolic of Bleach's new tone. When Zaraki finally kills her, he hears a voice for the first time. It's his Zanpakuto. The blade he's carried for centuries finally speaks to him. The beast has evolved. While that's happening, Mayuri fortifies his lab against future Quincy invasions, layering it with traps, reishi interference, and whatever psychotic chemicals he's been brewing this week. Sajin, on the other hand, takes a stranger path. He visits what I can only describe as a giant talking werewolf elder. Think ancient samurai dog god. This entity gives Sajin a mysterious method to gain the strength to defeat his enemies. Spoilers, it's gonna get weird later. Back to Squad 0. Their first stop, Injiru Hiriji, the Hot Springs Demon. He's the guy who taught Unohana everything she knows about healing. His palace is basically a spa from hell. 2 hot springs, 1 red, 1 white. The white blood spring draws out all the bad blood, which, yes, means your literal blood leaves your body. And the red blood spring replenishes it. It's like a supernatural dialysis machine, except it's also boiling. Ichigo heals the fastest since his wounds weren't as severe, but Renji insists he's ready to move on too. They both graduate to the next palace, where we can get a surprise cameo from Kon. Next up, Kiryu Hikifuna's palace. She's the literal goddess of cooking, and her palace is home to a banquet that could intimidate Goku and Vegeta combined. Everything they eat is infused with spiritual pressure. The food doesn't just heal, it supercharges them. But as Ichigo stuffs his face, he starts feeling guilty. While the other captains are bleeding and rebuilding the Serete, he's soaking in hot springs and eating 5-star meals. Renji calls him an idiot, because this is their training. Kiryu confirms it, explaining that every step is designed to restore and fortify their spiritual energy. And when she says it, her spiritual pressure flares and her body literally shifts into her old form. She explains she burns through power when she cooks, transforming her appearance in the process. Bleach logic, baby. It's also worth mentioning that she's equipped with the largest personality we've seen thus far. And I legit didn't think that it got any bigger than Rangiku's. Next, Ichigo and Renji head to the palace of Oetsu Nimaya, the creator of all Zanpakuto. Noetsu is a character, dressed like a hip-hop artist, surrounded by beautiful women, and constantly flirting with his own legend. But make no mistake, this man is a godsmith. He greets Ichigo and Renji, drops a bomb of truth, and sends them up to a small shack on a hill. There, he drops another truth bomb. Ichigo's Bankai can't be repaired, but it can be reborn. Before that can happen though, Ichigo needs to face the hard truth. Zangetsu isn't his true Zanpakuto. Oetsu reveals that the women they met upon arrival weren't attendants, they were Asauchi, the blank, nameless blades that all Soul Reapers receive when they begin their training. As the Shinigami's power grows, the Asauchi takes on the form of their soul, becoming their personalized Zanpakuto. Oetsu throws Ichigo and Renji into a pit filled with angry Asauchi. If they can't subdue one, they fail. 3 days later, Renji emerges victorious. Ichigo doesn't. Oetsu tells him bluntly that he's failed the test, and that he's being sent back to the world of the living permanently. Ichigo returns home, and for the first time in the series, he just stops. He visits his boss. Apparently, he had a side gig running errands for this woman, something that even hardcore fans forget exists. She treats him like a little brother and lets him shower and just gives him space. When he comes out, his father Isshin is there, back in his Soul Reaper form. Ichigo's boss can't see him, so Ichigo quietly thanks her and leaves, leaving his substitute Soul Reaper badge behind. Symbolically, he's done. Or so he thinks. Isshin tells Ichigo it's time he learned the truth about his mother, about himself, and about the blood that runs in his veins. We finally get the full story of Ichigo's mother, and honestly, it changes everything we thought we knew about Bleach. Back when Misaki was young, she lived with Ryuken Ishida, Ryor's father, and his family. Why? Because she was meant to marry Ryuken, to preserve the Quincy bloodline. You can already tell how well that was going to go. Meanwhile, Isshin Shiba, back then, still the captain of Squad 10, starts investigating reports of strange hollows killing Soul Reapers in the world of the living. Isshin decides to check it out himself, because apparently sending subordinates is overrated. Really, he's just trying to protect his subordinates, because if lower-level Shinigami are being murdered by this thing, he figures a captain is probably going to be the best one to deal with it. When he arrives, he encounters a hollow named White, a monstrous experiment that looks eerily similar to Ichigo's hollow form from his fight with Ulquiorra. Misaki senses the battle from Ryuken's house and decides to go help, despite Ryuken warning her not to. He reminds her that Quincy only intervened after Soul Reapers are dead to avoid being seen. She ignores him. Queen behavior. When she arrives, Isshin is on the verge of losing. She fires an arrow that White narrowly dodges, and when the hollow turns on her, she lets it get close enough to shoot it point blank in the head. It explodes, and for a moment, everything seems fine. Misaki checks on Isshin, who's badly wounded but already impressed by her. He's fascinated by the idea of a Quincy helping a Soul Reaper. He's also never seen one, so he makes mention of that as well. It goes against everything either of them was taught. They part ways, both intrigued by the other. But shortly after this event, Misaki collapses. She's been infected by White's residual energy and begins to hollowify. Ryuken rushes her to his father for help, but on the way they run into Isshin. The two argue, because of course they do, and then Kisuke drops in like the third act twist in a Tarantino movie. He tells them he can save Misaki, but it has to be right now. At Urahara's shop, he explains that White's infection was originally the result of one of his own failed experiments meant to strengthen Soul Reapers. The process was never meant for Quincy's, and it's slowly killing her. But there's a way out. Isshin can tether his soul to hers, counteracting the hollow's influence. The catch? He'll have to give up his life as a Soul Reaper and become human, completely powerless. Isshin doesn't even hesitate. He agrees immediately. From that day on, Isshin becomes human, opens a clinic, and lives a quiet life with Misaki. They fall in love, have 3 kids, Ichigo, Karan, and Uzu, and for a time, things are perfect, until the night Misaki dies, killed by a hollow, ironically a result of Yhwach's interference in Quincy bloodlines. Her death reawakens Isshin's buried powers, and everything about Ichigo's strange hybrid nature finally makes sense. Ichigo Kurosaki isn't just a Soul Reaper. He's part hollow, part Soul Reaper, part Fullbringer, and part Quincy, the ultimate accident of destiny. Back in the present, Oetsu sends one of his attendants to bring Ichigo back to the royal realm. He's passed his trial, finally understanding where his power came from, and now it's time to forge a new weapon. Ichigo returns to the True Palace, where Oetsu forges his new Zanpakuto right before his eyes. But first, Ichigo has to say goodbye. He faces Zangetsu, the old man who's been guiding him since day one. In a gut punch of a scene, Zangetsu reveals the truth. He is the manifestation of Ichigo's Quincy blood. The reason he looks like Yhwach is because in a way, he is Yhwach. Just the part of him that tried to protect Ichigo from his own Shinigami power. He confesses that he once thought he'd have to kill Ichigo to keep him from becoming a Soul Reaper. But after fighting alongside him, he realizes Ichigo's heart was stronger than either side of his lineage. Zangetsu releases the limiter that he's been holding on Ichigo's power, letting him finally wield everything that was rightfully his. Oetsu finishes the forging process, and Ichigo steps up to claim his new blades, plural, 2 swords, one representing the hollow and the other the Quincy. For the first time in his life, Ichigo finally holds his true Zanpakuto. As I said earlier, this is the new peak Bleach. Everything about the 1000-Year Blood War feels like Bleach in hardcore mode. A high stakes, Game of Thrones style bloodbath where no one is safe. Don't get attached because your favorite character could be gone in an instant. And honestly, that's the Bleach we should have had all along. Fights finally have consequences. When people lose, they don't just walk away with their tails between their legs. They bleed, they die, and the world actually changes because of it. And it's not just the nameless side characters getting taken out. It's the ones we've grown up with and the ones we've known for years. That's what makes it hit so hard. It feels like a revolution. The rebirth of a series that desperately needed to have life breathed back into it. The revelations, the storytelling, the animation, everything about the 1,000-Year Blood War is firing on all cylinders. I have zero complaints, and honestly, I couldn't wait for more. Cut back to the Quincy's and things are starting to heat up again. Yhwach gathers the Stern Ritter and makes a shocking announcement. He's naming his successor. And it's not one of them. It's Uryu Ishida, the last remaining Quincy of the world of living. The Stern Ritter are furious. Betrayal brews in the ranks, and the bloodlust turns inward. Yhwach doesn't care. The stage is set. Yhwach launches his second invasion of the Soul Society and the bloodbath resumes. Bambietta storms in looking for Sajin, but instead runs into some poor random Soul Reapers first and vaporizes them without hesitation. When Sajin finally appears, he's not what he used to be. He shed his beastly form and now looks almost human, except for one small detail. He no longer has a heart, literally. The power given to him by his clan's ancient wolf deity came at the cost of his humanity. While all hell breaks loose, Mayuri is holed up in his lab doing what he does best, science crimes. He realizes the Quincy's use shadows to travel between realms, so he floods his entire lab with light to keep them out. Even his outfit glows like he just grabbed a superstar in Super Mario World. Meanwhile, Kisuke hacks into Mayuri's comms and drops a major reveal to all captains. The Quincy's can't steal hollow powers. Why? Because their reishi is poisonous to them. That's why they can't absorb the Arrancar's resurrection. So Kisuke creates a device that allows the captains to temporarily hollowify their bankai, letting them use them again safely. The captains reclaim their power, and the tide starts to turn. That is, until the Quincy's activate their Volstandish, their angelic transformations that turns the battlefield into a nightmare. Sajin unleashes his new bankai, one powered with the sacrifice of his heart. It makes him effectively immortal for a short time. He wrecks Bambietta, utterly destroys her, and goes after Yhwach himself. But when his borrowed power fades, he reverts, not to a corpse, but to a wolf, a literal dog. It's one of those I hope it was worth it moments that Bleach does so well. Bittersweet, tragic, and kind of insane. Something I failed to mention until now, because honestly there's a lot going on, is that a few of the Vizards were allowed to return to the Soul Society, reclaiming their old ranks as captains and lieutenants. Among them are Shinji, Mashiro, Kensei, and Rojiro. You know, the crew that Aizen turned into walking hollow experiments. Yeah, they're back like nothing happened. You gotta love the Soul Society's HR department. Kensei and Rojiro team up against the steroid-infused maniac Masked Masculine, a Stern Ritter who's basically a pro wrestler turned into divine being. His entire gimmick is that he gets stronger when his little sidekick James cheers for him. It's like fighting Hulk Hogan with a hype beast on steroids. Kensei and Rojiro end up getting wrecked, because every time they land a solid hit, James just hits the emotional undo button. Mask's power is so ridiculous it borders on parody, and yet in true Bleach fashion, it's played completely straight. Elsewhere, BG9 goes another round with Soifeng. This time, she's mastered a technique she couldn't control before, the same one that forced her to rely on her bankai earlier in the war. Let's just say the robotic Quincy doesn't stand much of a chance now. Meanwhile, the tides finally start to turn. Reinforcements arrive in the form of Renji, Rukia, and Byakuya, all newly leveled up thanks to their time training in the Royal Realm. Rukia and Byakuya take on Aznaught, and things get horrifyingly intense. Naught's fear-based powers are the stuff of nightmares, literally. But Rukia overcomes him by lowering her body temperature to absolute zero. She releases her bankai, Haka no Tagame, a weapon so powerful and unstable it almost kills her. She ends Aznaught, but at a cost. Remaining in her bankai form too long would have killed her for real. Renji, on the other hand, finally unleashes his true bankai, Sui Zabimaru, a form that's nothing like the pseudo one he's used before. With it, he absolutely obliterates Masked Masculine, bringing that ridiculous tag team to an end. Let's take a quick backstep to explain where this new power-up came from. During their time in the Royal Palace, Ichigo and Renji trained under Ichibe Hoisobe, the leader of the Zero Division, also known as the monk who calls the real name. Ichibe has the ability to name things, giving them their true identity, which means he literally knows the true names of every Zanpakuto before the wielders do. He's basically God's calligrapher. He's the one who tells Renji that he's actually never been using his sword's real name, and that's why his Bankai's full power was locked away. With this training complete, Renji finally gains access to the true Zabimaru. After that, they head to Shinjumaru Shutara, the divine seamstress of Squad Zero, who crafts new outfits for Ichigo, Renji, and the others, armor woven from spiritual fabric that helps channel their energy more efficiently. Then, it's time to go back to the battlefield. Back in the Serete, Yoichiro, Kinpachi's tiny gremlin of a lieutenant, and Asane are tending to the gravely injured Quincy and Rojiro when they're suddenly attacked by a new Quincy we've never seen before. This guy's power is straight out of Doctor Who. He can erase himself from memory the instant someone looks away. Every time he vanishes, everyone forgets he exists. He's basically one of the Silence in a trench coat, but somehow Yuichiro's instincts let him track him anyway. The two clash until out of nowhere another Quincy appears, Grimmie Tomo, and things get weird. Grimmie casually kills the invincible Quincy mid-fight, saying the guy was nothing more than a figment of his imagination, which he's not lying about. That's his whole ability. Grimmie can make anything he imagines real. If he thinks the air turns to stone, it does. If he thinks your bones are cookies, congratulations, you're a walking snack. It's one of the most terrifying powers in the series, and also one of the most sadistic. He kills Quincy and Rojiro for good this time, then turns his attention on Yuichiro. Just as she's about to become the next casualty, someone steps into the scene, Kinpachi Zaraki. Kinpachi doesn't even flinch at Grimmie's powers. The dude's imagination is reality itself, and Kinpachi still looks at him like he's a mild inconvenience. Everything Grimmie throws at him, bullets, explosions, the vacuum of outer space, Kinpachi just tanks through with sheer willpower. Realizing he can't win normally, Grimmie decides to end it all by imagining a meteor, a literal meteor, to crash into the Serete. It's an insane apocalyptic moment. Until Kinpachi does the unthinkable. He releases his Shikai for the first time ever. One swing, the meteor splits in half. Even Grimmie can't comprehend what he's up against. In a final act of disbelief, his imagination turns against him. His body breaks apart as he dies, undone by his own limitless power. The fight is over, but the victory comes at a cost. Afterwards, Yuichiro disappears. No body, no trace, just gone. It's implied, heavily, that Yuichiro was never really human at all, but rather the manifestation of Kinpachi's Zanpakuto spirit given physical form. When Kinpachi finally awakened his sword's true power, she returned to where she came from. It's tragic, poetic, and pure Bleach. At this point, Ichigo Kurosaki, our orange-haired avatar of chaos, finally descends from the Soul King's palace and lands back in the Serete. And right away, you can feel it. The vibe's different. Ichigo doesn't even hesitate. He wades into a swarm of 4 or 5 Quincy's, some of whom are already in their Volstendish forms, and just wrecks them effortlessly. He's faster, stronger, cooler. He's walking power fantasy fan service and he knows it. He whips out a new version of the Getsuga Tensho, and it's absolutely insane. Like the air itself screams when he swings. With barely a pause, Ichigo sets off to do what we've been waiting over a decade for. Find Yhwach and end this war once and for all. While Ichigo's cutting his way across the Serete, Mayuri finally crawls out of his lab to have some fun. His opponent, the delightfully deranged Giselle, the self-proclaimed zombie queen of the Stern Ritter. Giselle's power is simple but horrifying. Anyone who touches her blood becomes a zombie that obeys her will. And yes, she can even zombieify Quincy's, though only after they're dead. Her first zombie, none other than Bambietta, the explosive Stern Ritter who can turn anything she touches into a bomb. Their relationship is, let's say complicated. And by complicated, I mean Bambi is a zombie slave and Giselle is having way too much fun with it. Mayuri naturally is prepared for this nonsense. He's armed with little metallic orbs that delay reishi reactions, meaning he can control exactly when Bambietta's bombs go off. So instead of dying instantly, he basically sets timed fireworks across the battlefield. Giselle, furious that her plaything isn't working, sends out her army of zombified Soul Reapers, and Mayuri just smirks. Turns out he's got an army too, a squad of reprogrammed Arrancar under his control, because of course he does. So yeah, Mayuri literally sends dead hollows to fight dead soul reapers. It's chaos and it's glorious. Giselle ups the ante by sending in the big guns, zombified versions of Toshiro, Rangiku, Kinsei, and Rujiro. Mayuri handles it like only he can, by drugging them senseless. He traps Toshiro in a hallucination loop where the poor guy keeps killing Mayuri over and over again. Mayuri's mental pharmacy is so stacked I'm convinced he's either the best or worst party host in all of anime. Then Mayuri pulls off a complete flex. He flips the zombies. Using one of his compounds, he turns Giselle's undead army into his undead army. Her minions immediately turn on their master and start attacking other Stern Ritter, including Pepe, the love-obsessed Quincy. Pepe, for the record, is the creepiest little freak in the entire series. He controls people's hearts using love arrows like some discount Cupid on meth. He tries to use it on his own allies, but Lolito, his teammate, has had enough. She eats him alive. Literally. The Quincy's are now eating each other. The war has fully derailed. Meanwhile, Yhwach finally breaches the Soul King's palace. How? Because Ichigo, in his descent, broke through the protective barrier. Whoops. Yhwach doesn't bring an army. He doesn't need one. He ascends with only a handful of top-tier Quincy's. The Schutzstaffel, his elite guard. These guys make the Stern Ritter look like mall cops. Let's introduce the freak show lineup. Lilibaro, the sniper of God. His rifle fires reishi bullets that never stop until they pierce their target. Gerard Valkyrie, a literal knockoff Thor. His ability, the Miracle, makes him grow larger and stronger the more damage he takes. Pernita Parnkais, a horrifying mass of nerves and fingers that can control and dismember anything it touches. Askin Nachlavar, the smooth-talking poison master who manipulates lethal doses by adjusting body chemistry. Swallow some of your blood and he can make your blood itself toxic. Neinzel Weisel, a two-tongued freak who can deflect any attack he sees coming. Yugrim Hashfalt, Yhwach's right-hand man, the balancer, and Uryu Ashida, the wild card, the traitor, Ichigo's best friend turned possible enemy. As Yhwach and his Schutzstaffel storm the upper realms, Kisuke Urahara activates a gate to send Ichigo and the gang up to the palace. Joining Ichigo are Orihime, Chad, Ganju, and Yoruichi, ready to confront the Quincy's head-on. When the Quincy's arrive, they're immediately greeted by Shinjumaru, the divine seamstress herself, who summons the court guards to fight the invading Schutzstaffel. But these elite Quincy's are no pushovers. Nyanzol is the first to step up, only to get instantly deleted by Shutara, who skewers him through the skull with a needle before he can even blink. Then Lilibaro retaliates. One shot, straight to the head. Shutaro drops. He fires again and seems to destroy the palaces of Squad Zero, reducing the heavens themselves to rubble. But in true Bleach fashion, it's all a fake out. As Lily turns to gloat, the illusion shatters. Squad Zero's palaces are perfectly intact, and he realizes too late that they've been trapped inside a massive wooden cage, handcrafted by Kiryu. Inside the cage, the remaining members of Squad Zero, Shutaro, Tenjiro, Kiryu, and Oetsu, stand together facing the Quincy invaders. Ichibe stands in front of the palace of the Soul King himself, protecting it from anybody that may possibly get through. They're done playing defense. For the first time since the war began, heaven itself is ready to fight back. With the royal guard struggling, Oetsu steps in, and my god does this man not play around. His sword is so sharp that he can't even sheath it. It cuts through everything, including its own scabbard, so instead he keeps it submerged in what looks like jelly. Yeah, jelly. This dude literally stores the sharpest weapon in existence inside slime. Once he steps up, the Schutzstaffel don't even stand a chance. Oetsu cuts down Lily, Gerard, Pernita, and Askin before they even realize the fight has started. That leaves Yhwach, Uryu, and Yugrim standing. And then, in true Minecraft fashion, Yhwach throws an ender pearl and teleports out of the fight entirely. He escapes the cage, leaving his soldiers behind, and goes straight for Ichibe, the monk himself. Oetsu keeps fighting. It turns out that one of the Stern Ritter he killed, Askin, isn't actually dead. The poison freak gulps down his own blood, activating his ability to adjust toxicity levels, which makes Oetsu's own blood lethal to him. Oetsu literally starts bleeding himself to stay alive while trying to kill Askin again. Meanwhile, Ichibe and Yhwach finally square off. For a while, it looks like Ichibe might actually win. His ink powers erase names, and in Bleach, if something doesn't have a name, it loses its identity, its meaning, even its existence. He literally paints over Yhwach's soul. But Yhwach is no ordinary Quincy. He activates Auswollen, draining the life force of the surviving Stern Ritter below, using it to revive his fallen Schutzstaffen. And if that wasn't enough, he unveils a new trick. His pupils split into 3, allowing him to see every possible future. At this point, Ichigo realizes he's not fighting a man anymore. He's fighting the son of the Soul King himself. Back inside the cage, the rest of Squad Zero are not having a good time. They're strong, absurdly strong, but there's a catch. Their powers are linked. If they ever all released their full powers at once, the combined energy would destroy all realms, the Soul Society, the world of living, and Hueco Mundo. To give Shutara a chance to use her Bankai, Kiryu, Tenjiro, and Oetsu willingly take their own lives, releasing their seals in the process. With their deaths, Shutara's true power activates, and she absolutely annihilates the Schutzstaffel. It's one of those holy crap she's overpowered moments until it isn't. Because out of nowhere, Uryu Ashita escapes from the Bankai's range and fatally strikes Shutaro, killing her, and freeing the Schutzstaffel once again. Now, a few things here struck me as odd choices. Not deal breakers, but definitely eyebrow raisers. For one, the first episode of Season 3 literally reuses the last episode of Season 2 for its entire first half. It's not the end of the world, but it's a strange decision. Almost like the show's warming the engines again instead of just taking off. Still, not unforgivable. But once things get moving, the kid gloves are off. Well, almost completely off. As more and more captains and lieutenants fall to the Stern Ritter, it becomes painfully clear just how unprepared the Soul Reapers have become over the last 1,000 years. All that time Yhwach was regaining his power, they were getting comfortable. Even Squad Zero, the supposed gods amongst gods, fall. And that says everything. The storytelling, though, it keeps climbing. Every event, every line, every cut, it's all deliberate. Nothing's coincidental, nothing's inconsequential. It's layered, purposeful, and brutally efficient. No wasted screen time, no filler, just pure refined narrative momentum. It's elegant, it's brutal, it's Bleach at its most focused. And for the first time in years, it really feels like Bleach is finally heading toward the send-off it's always deserved. So let's get to the final season currently out and wrap this one up. Simultaneously, Yhwach rips Ichigo apart. The last defense between him and Divinity falls. The gates open and Yhwach ascends the staircase to the Soul King's chamber, his Schutzstaffel following behind. Moments later, Ichigo and his friends finally reach the same staircase. Too late. Ichigo hears Ichibe's fading voice echoing in his mind, telling him to speak his name. Ichigo shouts it, and through that connection, Ichibe temporarily resurrects himself to warn them. They have to stop Yhwach from killing the Soul King. Cut to Yhwach, and it's already too late. He stabs the Soul King through the chest. Ichigo and the gang sprint up the stairway, arriving just in time to confront Yhwach. The two face off in an incredible clash, and for a moment, it seems like Ichigo might actually overpower him. But for a moment is as long as it lasts. Yhwach stops holding back and absolutely folds Ichigo, overwhelming him in seconds. Meanwhile, down in the Serete, Kisuke and Mayuri work together to create a portal that can send reinforcements to the Soul King's palace. Back in the throne room, Ichigo finally lands a hit, but when he sees the Soul King's body impaled on Yhwach's sword, instincts take over. He does what any good guy would do. He pulls the sword out, and that's the mistake that almost ends reality. The Quincy blood in Ichigo reacts, forcing him to swing the blade and slice the Soul King clean in half, the exact same way Yhwach cut down Yamamoto. Immediately, the realm begins to crumble. As the dimensions start collapsing, Joshiro steps forward. We finally learn his secret. When he was a sickly child, his parents prayed to a deity to save him, a deity that turned out to be the right arm of the Soul King. That divine fragment fused with Joshiro's body, keeping him alive all these years. Now, he uses it to stabilize reality himself. Black mist pours from Joshiro, rising through the sky to the Soul King's palace, where it wraps around the broken body of the Soul King, holding the universe together. It's a haunting, selfless moment, and Joshiro's final act. Back on the ground, Shunsui decides it's time to call in the devil himself. He visits Aizen in prison, half blinded and bound to his chair, and makes him an offer he literally can't refuse. If Aizen helps protect the Soul Society, Shunsui will grant him limited freedom, sight, speech, and the ability to use his power again. Aizen, who already freed himself ages ago just to flex, plays along anyway, because of course he does. Ichigo and Yhwach resume their battle, but are interrupted by Uryu. After a fight where Ichigo tries to get Uryu to see reason, he doesn't succeed, and Uryu launches an arrow straight through Ichigo. He falls out of sight, bleeding. Yhwach, meanwhile, uses the combined power of his Schutzstaffel to shatter the crystal that protects the Soul King, and then absorbs him whole. He transforms into something no longer human or Quincy, a multi-eyed god, the father of all energy. Back in the Serete, one-eyed monsters start raining from the heavens, manifestation of the Soul King's energy gone berserk. Aizen, annoyed, looks up and basically says, "Why don't you just destroy them with your spiritual pressure?" Then does exactly that. He wipes them out effortlessly. The man can't even leave his chair, and he's still the coolest under pressure character in the series. Out of the rubble crawl the surviving Stern Ritter, Nanana, Lolito, Giselle, and Bazby. Nanana tries to rally them to keep fighting for Yhwach, but Bazby had enough. He puts a hole through him mid-sentence and tells everyone else they're done following a god who treats them like batteries. They agree to a truce with the Soul Reapers, for now. The goal? Take down Yhwach. At this point, everyone's moving toward the Soul King's palace. Orihime heals Ichigo's arrow wound, and the crew regroups for the final push. From Hueco Mundo, Nell and Grimmjow show up, both ready to throw hands. Thanks to Kisuke, Nell now has a device that lets her transform into her adult form at will, because Kubo loves fan service almost as much as he loves giant swords. They also bring backup, a few of the Fullbringers from the end of the original series. Meanwhile, Yoruichi has been setting up teleportation stakes throughout the battlefield, creating warp points to let everyone move instantly between realms. In the Serete, the surviving Soul Reapers and Vizards complete their portal to the Soul King's palace. But when they arrive, it's not the palace anymore. Yhwach has reshaped heaven itself into the Wandenreich, creating his new throne world, the Varvelt, a blinding white fortress that looks like heaven built by Nazis. The truce between the Soul Reapers and the Quincy's dissolves. The Stern Ritter peel off to fight their own battles. The Soul Reapers advance slowly towards the Varvelt, each group finding themselves facing one of Yhwach's resurrected Schutzstaffel. Renji confronts Uryu, and while he gains the upper hand at first, Uryu quickly evens the odds with precision and his newly awakened Volstandish. Mayuri and Kinpachi run into Pernita, who reveals his true form, the left arm of the Soul King. Mayuri deduces that Pernita extends his own nerves into his victims to control their bodies like puppets. Kinpachi falls early, leaving Mayuri to hold the line. But for once, even the mad scientist starts to falter. Nimue, his greatest creation and daughter, sacrifices herself to save him, disintegrating Pernita from the inside. Mayuri's reaction? Somewhere between sorrow and denial. He saves her brain because that's what passes for love in this world, and then coldly reveals that he was able to revive the fallen warriors that had turned into zombies, but at the sacrifice of some of their lifespan. Toshiro, Rangiku, Kinsei, and Rojiro are all restored, ready to rejoin the fight, which, yeah, have some issues with that. For now, the war goes on. We've officially entered the everyone's fighting everyone phase of the war, where Kubo is juggling about 6 final battles and somehow making it work. We start with one of the best fights in the series, Shunui versus Lily. Now, this battle is pure chaos. I mean that in the best possible way. It's stylish, poetic, and somehow still horrifying. Kubo also uses this fight to do something really cool. He makes the filler version of Shunui's Zanpakuto spirit canon. That's right, the filler arc that people used to write off as non-canon fluff. Kubo looked at that and went, nah, that was pretty cool, let's make it real. Class A move. Lily eventually unleashes his Volstandish, transforming into what I can only describe as an owl on methamphetamine. Dude looks like he flew out of a nightmare. He claims there's no weapon that can kill him, which is a bold statement to make in a series where people don't have to die to be taken down. Then we get a flashback, an exposition dump that actually works. Shunsui reveals that he's been protecting a sacred Zanpakuto for years, one that can only be wielded by his lieutenant Nanao. It's a weapon passed down through generations meant to slay divine beings. Together, Shunsui and Nanao take on Lily in an absolutely cinematic sequence, using the blade's ability to reflect divine energy. They turn Lily's own godlike attack against him. He's obliterated by his own light, and it's as poetic as it is metal. Next up, we shift gears for an emotional flashback that gives us the backstory no one expected to care about, but somehow it hits hard anyway. Bazby and Yugrum Hashvalt were childhood friends, both Quincy's, both survivors. As kids, Bazby was the prodigy. He could create crossbows at a young age, while Yugrum couldn't even make a basic bow. Despite that, they became inseparable. Then, tragedy struck. Yhwach ordered his forces to burn Bazby's village to the ground. That's the moment that Bazby swore revenge, not just on the invaders, but but on the king himself. He and Yugrim trained together for years, planning to one day challenge Yhwach. But when Yhwach eventually came recruiting for his elite Quincy army, something unexpected happened. Completely ignored Basby and chose Yugrim instead. Yhwach claimed Yugrim had the other half of his power, the ability to balance the energy of those around him and act as Yhwach's vessel while he slept. Yugrim became his second in command, and Basby was left behind. In the present, their paths crossed one last time. Basby tries to kill Yugrim, still chasing that promise of revenge. But Yugrim, now fully indoctrinated, doesn't even hesitate. Using Yhwach's borrowed foresight, he predicts every move and kills Basby without flinching. It's tragic. Two friends torn apart by destiny and a rare bit of emotional payoff in a war arc that's mostly explosions and screaming. Meanwhile, Ichigo and the gang run into Askin, the laid-back poison master who's way too smug for someone dressed like a barista. He toys with them, leading them in circles until he can infect the air with his poison, making their own reishi toxic to their bodies. They're literally breathing poison. Things look bad until the queen of Fool herself, Yoruichi, shows up, and surprisingly, she's not alone. She's brought her little brother, Yushiro. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this was a weird move by Kubo. Yoruichi's brother gets introduced basically 16 episodes from the end. It's like pulling a DLC character from a hat, but he's cool enough that you roll with it. Together, they managed to corner Askin, at least for a little while, but because Askin's power scales off exposure, he quickly becomes immune to Yushiro's attacks and starts turning the tide. It's another, we might win. Oh, never mind. Bleach moment. Ichigo and his friends use the distraction to escape, heading deeper into the Varvelt. Next, the gang encounters Gerard Valkyrie. They hit him with everything they've got, Shikai Bankai teamwork, and he kinda just takes it and seems to be down. But after they believe that they've brought him down, he immediately grows larger, stronger, and more unstoppable. His ability, the Miracle, turns every wound into power. Honestly, it's one of the least original and least entertaining fights in this arc. While all of this chaos unfolds, we cut away to the world of the living. Isshin and Ryukin stand together at Masaki's grave, quietly watching the storm unfold in the sky. There's no fighting, no yelling, just two fathers acknowledging what's about to happen. The old generation is gone, their sons are walking into the end of the world, and with that, they decide they're joining the fight. The last episode, as of now, finally gives us what we've all been waiting for, an answer to Urio's betrayal. We cut back to his time among the Stern Ritter. Yugrim keeps calling him a traitor, telling him he's going to turn on Yhwach, and every single time, Urio denies it, but his hesitation says it all. Fast forward to the present, Ichigo, Orihime, and Chad finally corner him, demanding the truth. And in classic Urio fashion, he gives them the most logical, self-sacrificing answer possible. He joined Yhwach because he's the only one who can kill him. His Quincy lineage, his bloodline, makes him uniquely capable of ending Yhwach's life once and for all. Before anyone can process this, Yugrim steps out of the shadows, basically saying, "Told you so." Uryun, bow drawn, and tells Ichigo to go on ahead. This is his fight. Meanwhile, Isshin and Ryukin are making their move. Using a stolen Quincy pass, an artifact taken by Ryukin's father before Yhwach banished him, they gain access to the Soul King's palace. Everyone's converging on the same place. As the dust settles, Ichigo, Orihime, and Chad climb the last staircase to the Varvelt. Inside, Lolito stands before Yhwach, reminding him that he was supposed to be asleep and that it's a shame they didn't manage to kill him when they had the chance. The camera pulls back to the edge of the Dark City and the credits roll, and that's all we have so far. Alright, so with the final season of Bleach, the 1000-Year Blood War, coming out in 2026, I figured I'd get a head start on sharing my thoughts about what we've seen so far. To be completely honest, I wasn't expecting it to hit as hard as it did. At first, I thought it was going to be a nostalgia cash grab, and at first, I wasn't entirely wrong, but then it got good, like really good. The original Bleach anime was very kid-friendly, family-friendly even. So, sure, there was blood, sometimes an arm or two got chopped off, but overall, it was tame, watered down to appeal to a broader audience. The 1000-Year Blood War doesn't do that. It's brutal, it's bloody, it's cinematic. It feels like what Bleach was always meant to be. That said, the original series had its issues. And man, the filler situation was ridiculous. Some of those arcs were literally dropped right in the middle of major battles. I remember watching the show back when it was airing, getting all hyped for the next episode, only to get hit with a completely unrelated storyline that dragged on for 44 episodes. It wasn't all bad, there were definitely filler arcs that added flavor, and the pacing absolutely shot. By the time Bleach was ending, I was skipping whole chunks because I knew nothing important was going to happen. And honestly, I don't blame Studio Pierrot for pulling the plug when they did. They knew the fan base was slipping away, and continuing to stretch a story that was already stretched too thin wasn't helping. To its credit though, the anime did occasionally tie filler arcs back into the main story. Like when Ichigo mentally faces the leader of the Bounts, those moments showed effort, even if they couldn't save the overall pacing problem. Then the Thousand Year Blood War dropped and everything changed. This wasn't a continuation, it was Bleach redefined. The Thousand Year Blood War came in like a reboot that didn't forget its roots. From episode 1, it's darker, sharper, and unapologetically more mature. It feels like the story finally grew up with its audience. If I had to guess, this is probably the tone Kubo always wanted from the start. The manga always leaned darker than the anime, and the Thousand Year Blood War finally lets that bleed through, literally. The art direction and animation style, flawless. They nailed the tone visually. It's consistent, cinematic, and crisp. None of that early Dragon Ball Super rough draft energy. The return of Bleach had to look right, and it absolutely does. Yes, there are some retcons, but that's normal for long-running series, and honestly, most of them work. The continuity between the old anime and the Thousand Year Blood War feels natural, even if it's technically a continuation and not a true sequel. The tonal shift, the polish, and the subtitle change make it feel like one though. And perhaps the best part, there's almost no filler. You get concise storytelling, actual stakes, and meaningful progress. Even when they do break from the main story, like Khan's recap bits or Askin's perspective episode, it fits. It feels intentional. The humor's still there, but it's no longer overbearing. It's balanced, just enough to remind you this is still Bleach, but not enough to undercut the tension. What makes the Thousand Year Blood War so good is that for the first time, it feels like anyone can die. Fan favorites bleed out, legends fall, characters you thought were untouchable aren't. They really Game of Thrones to the Bleach universe. That said, I do have a bone to pick with how they handled a few deaths. The revival of Toshiro, Rangiku, Kinsei, and Rojiro, all undone because Mayuri figured out how to reverse Giselle's zombification, was a bit of a cop-out. It doesn't ruin the show, but it does dull the impact. When deaths stop mattering, so do the stakes. I'm not saying I wanted these characters dead, but I'd have respected the finality if they were. If you're going dark, go all the way. At the end of the day, the Thousand Year Blood War isn't just a comeback, it's a transformation. It takes a series that started off lighthearted and stylized and turns it into something that aged with its fans. The characters, the tone, the art, even the music, everything feels like Bleach evolved instead of rebooted. This isn't the same series we grew up with, and it's exactly why it works. So yeah, the Thousand Year Blood War isn't perfect, but it's bold, it's emotional, and it gives the universe the gravitas it's always deserved. But most importantly, it works. If you don't believe me, watch it yourself. And if you've been sleeping on Bleach since 2012, wake up. Thanks for watching, and if you've made it this far, I genuinely appreciate your time and patience. More videos coming soon, and you can bet I'll be covering the finale when it drops. Until then, I'll be here. See you in the next one.